that experience, I was first an academic and then moved into policy, has made me more and more convinced that there are a lot of really interesting insights from many disciplines, behavioural sciences especially, but many other disciplines, that policymakers do not routinely find out about. They might read the odd article, book review in The Economist or an article in The Prospect, and that's great that they do that, or a counterpoint pamphlet, for example. But often they read it and they say, well, that's interesting, okay, now let's get on with the real job. And there isn't necessarily a connection made between the two.
So much of this is about them, policymakers and politicians, being able to understand the issue in a way that allows them to recast the parameters of the problem in order to move beyond the stage in which we are simply stuck in a dilemma. And for this, one of the things that we're convinced about is that in order to do this, you need to be able to look at some of these policy issues and policy dilemmas through new lenses. And these new lenses often come, as Heather said, from disciplines and from research areas that are very seldom systematically adopted in the policy making and the policy analysis arena.
The strand of my research that I can talk about today was on social norms and why and how they matter in the political psychology of immigration and integration politics.
I'm also going to delve into this issue on the nature of evidence, particularly the nature of evidence that works for policymakers and practitioners.
This may be one such space where, in civilized discourse, we attempt to find common language briefly, not to find a common manifesto, but we try to re-describe what we do in terms that seem to make sense to others. The agendas of others can cross-infect and re-infect what it is we do back home. And therefore we're not faced with a dissemination problem, but with an engagement problem.
I'm saying that the task is to support and promote the resilience of couples or family members so that they can be protected as a resource, able to provide care that is costly to give in institutional settings.
It is where knowledge, how far knowledge of the past and the present can give you a calculable estimate of the future. In radical uncertainty, you have to accept it probably can't, but it might well not.
Thank you.
And this is bound to engage emotion. That is potentially two emotions to simplify. One emotion is that of attraction or excitement. The other one is that of anxiety. Let's keep it simple. And obviously, if the amount of anxiety that's generated in you by the prospect of the action you're taking is too great, you probably won't do anything. So by definition, what I've called a conviction narrative is what you need. So you need to take such facts as you've got available, and you want to get it from a spreadsheet and all the rest sophisticated science known to man, that's fine. But in the end, you put it into a narrative, and if it's a policy like the ones you've just been hearing about, you make a picture of how things are going to turn out, and you convince yourself that there are more reasons for doing this than otherwise. This is both a cognitive and an affective decision. That's the key point I'm trying to make.
Little things, behavioural psychology and cognitive psychology, things like this are being exploited or put through the mill at very great speed because it's so easy to produce these games. And if you've got a team of a few thousand people, you can publish one a week, definitely, no problem, especially if we're talking about Mahjong. And then you can experiment very, very quickly with different ways to motivate people to keep playing that game, to keep paying for that game, to subscribe, to share it with their friends, and to perform various other things.
Sort of gut level responses to difference are often quite negative. These can and are tempered greatly by strong social norms against prejudice, particularly sort of blatant forms of prejudice. And I agree that this is an important limit on, in certain circumstances, on the appeal of radical right-wing, anti-immigrant, anti-foreigner parties.
There's two ways of looking at it. There's a way that says, right, well, we design environments that essentially create incentives for us to behave honestly or to cheat less or to, bring out, in a sense, the better angels of our nature. And that's, I take that point. But there's also another competing way of resolving this issue, which is about becoming conscious, becoming more conscious of those moments where, in fact, we need to weigh up, our behavior in context. So not necessarily letting the system do the work, although that helps, but actually, enabling ourselves to have the time, to have the, the attention, in a sense, the leisure and the possibility to actually let some of these predispositions be modulated by thinking about it.
People, messenger effects. We know that messengers are experts, trusted, and people like us, right? Now, most messengers often are experts, sometimes are trusted, very rarely people like us. So there are